Hey guys, in this tutorial I will talk about decorator design pattern. So I have a working example with me and we will run it and I will show you what I have done to implement decorator design pattern. But before that, let us understand what is design pattern, and then what is decorator design pattern. So design pattern is simply a well-known way of coding, I would say, to solve a well-known problem, right? So what problem? Decorator solves the problem of tight coupled code, right? So in general, when you write code, you may end up writing tightly coupled code, and when you have to plug in and plug out some functionality, right, you will struggle and you have to do a lot of code changes. So that is the problem. Now the well-known solution is the decorator design pattern. Now this design pattern have its own pros and cons. Let me put those down for you. Let's put the pros first. Pros is easy to add or remove some feature or functionality, right? Second, easy maintenance of code, right? Third, clean code. These are the pros. Cons: definitely every design pattern have its own cons, so the decorator design pattern too have its own cons. So one is loss of extra code, repetition of code. So sometimes you may have to do repetition of code. For example, you have to like loop through same data multiple times, right? But you are loose coupled as well, so you have to decide, do you want to go for decorator design pattern or not, based on your requirement. So in general, if it is well known to you that in near future there are least chances that you have to remove that feature, or there could be some other additional feature coming on top of what is existing, right, then you should avoid using decorator pattern. Decorator pattern is for the case where you notice frequent updates are coming, or frequent features are coming on top of existing feature. Now let's understand it by an example. So in general, uh, let's take a UI example, right? So let's say we are creating a widget. What is a widget? So you see this event log, this section. Let's say this is a widget actually, right? Now when we started developing, uh, the product owner came and said, hey, we need to develop a event log widget, right? And the idea is that it would have some white area, just like this white area, where we will show some event logs, and then in future we will see what we need to add. Now this statement is very important. We will see what we need to add in future. Now based on that, you very well understand that definitely in future we will keep on adding some functionality on top of this. For example, minimizing the event log widget, settings for the event log widget, or clearing the logs, right? Or setting up subtask based on this, right? So this is a good candidate for your decorator design pattern. What could be a bad candidate for design pattern? Decorator design pattern, sorry. So let's say, let me think through a good example. Okay, Let's say you have to actually design a monolithic class, just like say Hibernate's session factory, right? Similar to that. Now, that session factory is something you are creating central to the application, right? Then expectation is that changes would be minimum. There is no point in using a decorator design pattern for that session factory, right? Because that is in the code and chances of its improvement are less. The frequency would be low, and also it would always remain tightly coupled and packed there, right? You would allow least extension of the code that is core to your application, right? When I say least extension, it's like you won't allow modification of this, right? Maybe you can allow extension, or you may not. It depends solely on the purpose of that code. So may not be the good example, but I think it fits well in this scenario. The session factory type of class, right? That is like central to your application. You will definitely like it to be high in performance, right? Well, that reminds me of this con. May impact performance, right? So that's another point, another disadvantage of using decorator design pattern. So that's all about pros and cons. Now let's try to understand how this design pattern works. As you see, it's called decorator. So think of it like in the same way, like decorating something. So for example, you have a box, right? In that box you put some gift, right? And then you close the box properly. Then you put a wrapping around it, right? So that it looks a bit nicer. And then you also put a paper label where you put your name or something else, or you put some nice words, right? And you decorate it properly before you gift it to somebody. So you can actually relate the decorator pattern to this. So if you see, we started with the gift inside the box. We packed the box, then we applied, well, we wrapped it up, right? And then we put a paper label where we put some nice words, and then we gifted it. So decorator pattern do the same thing. Now let's go by example and try to understand decorator design pattern. Let's take this widget example. I will keep it very neat and simple. I already have run it for you. I have created this example and run it. So let's take this widget example, right? So we started with a basic widget, right? And then the requirement came that, hey, add black and white borders, right? And then another requirement came that, hey, change the theme to dark. I mean, this white is not looking good, make it dark and make its text white, right? So let's see how decorator pattern fits here, how it would become easy to add and remove any additional functionality, right? Or like basically remove some functionality. So decorator pattern uses uh, well, it best uses your inheritance. You can use inheritance. Let me put this, right? So you can implement decorator pattern in different ways, so that we don't get confused. I would just follow one approach as of now. In future I can try or share other approach as well, but just for your knowledge, let me share it. One is you can leverage inheritance, right? Second is you can leverage composition, right? You can use any of those, right, to actually create a decorator class or decorator, or basically create your functionality using this decorator design pattern. Now mostly I would be using the inheritance, right? Well, it's a kind of hybrid that I would be using, but it's mostly, you can say, inheritance based, right? So I will show you how. I have used it. Okay, so our plan is that we will have the widget, and then on widget we will apply borders, right, which would be black and white, right, and then on this we will basically change the theme, right, to dark theme. That's like our initial code plan. Let's go with this. So let's start with this. What I have done is I have said, hey, whatever the widget is, whether it's black and white, whether it's dark themed or any type of widget, one thing is for sure that it is a widget, right? Let's write down the contract. So write down the contract. That's our first step. Let's put it actually in the file here, right? Write down the contract. This is our first step. One. So you see, what is the contract here? We are saying, pardon me for this bad naming here. It's not camel case. It's coming from Python actually. So yeah, in Python we use underscore. So but it's fine. I mean, for this example, it should be perfectly fine. Now, so we have written down the contract, right? So contract is, we say that we would be having a get widget method, right? That would be giving us the widget. Now it is a void type. You can also like return the widget from here, right? But for now I'm keeping it like void type, and expectation is that this get widget will actually give us the widget, and if we want to apply some additional features, then we apply on top of this by using inheritance or extension. Okay, now we need one base concrete class that gives the base implementation. So here we have this base widget decorator. What this widget decorator is doing is just giving the first implementation, right? So what it is doing, it's using composition here to get this widget, right, and initializing the default constructor, and then it's actually starting with the base. So it's your gift, you can say, or it's your widget. If I talk in context of this widget example, so it's like base widget, right? So for now we are using system.out.println to just print the message, but you understand, right? You can perform n number of functionalities here, right? So we are saying, hey, this is a basic widget, for example, right, and this is our base decorator. Now let's go ahead with our first implementation, right? What would be our first implementation? Now you might also ask like, hey, why this is null, right? I mean, you can say, hey, I mean, do we really need it? Not exactly, but if we want to keep a reference, we can, right? Maybe say I'm initializing a new widget, right? Something like this, right? A new implementation to something, then I can also like use it. But the basic idea is like we may want to keep the reference, so we can. I mean, I can keep reference of this one as well, right? Here I can say widget equal to this, but because our example is very simple, so we don't need to do this. But yeah, it's fine. I mean, if it is lying there, right? Okay, let's say let's go to this black and white widget, the first implementation or the first decorator, right? Now what this decorator is doing, on top of your like base widget decorator, it is giving another implementation, right? You had a base implementation, and you said that, hey, whatever widget is there, I want to add black and white borders to that, right? So what I have done is I said, okay, to add borders means that we say, hey, I'm starting to add the borders, then I get the widget, and then I say, hey, I'm finishing to print the border, right? So that's the way I have done it. So basically I have enclosed this get widget call between system.out.println. right? So to keep it simple, right? I mean, you could have done like you could have called the base widget and then you could have performed some actions on that as well, right? By because you have the reference, right? You could do additional work there. The idea is that you understand the base, right? Then you can always extend the functionality as per the need. Now let's see other decorator, that is the implementation of dark theme. It is saying that hey, whatever widget you give me, whether it's with border or without border, my job is just to apply the themes, right? And this one particularly I will apply the dark theme, right? And it's again enclosing the widget in between and just printing change theme to dark starts and then change theme to dark ends. Now let's see one implementation example of this, or rather I would say let's start with this. Let's go with this actually. I'm thinking about uh, adding one more decorator right on top of this and then removing one as well. Let's run it. Now before I run it, so this is the base decorator, right? This is our gift, or you can say the base. Then we applied the borders, right? And then we applied the dark theme, right? So gift, wrapper, labeling. Just to match with the example that I gave you earlier. Let's run it. Though you have the output in front of you, but I will still run it for the sake of like it runs. So yeah. So you see, we had this base widget, right? We bordered it with black and white borders, and then we also changed its themes, right? Now you may say, hey, how come we can easily add or remove functionality? Just go and do this. Functionality removed. Next time you run it, you won't have option to change the theme, or the theme won't be dark anymore. That's simple, right? Yeah, but if you have a lot of code, then you may turn into uh, how decorator works, right? But you need to understand the basics. So this is the basic, right? Now I will add it back, right? And this will again add the theme, right? Here you go. Now let's say I want to add the tools. Just I will copy paste it, and I would say tooled widget, okay? And in tooled widget I would say, let's say heading, settings and minimize options starts, okay? Or if you don't want to say start, I mean, let's say because it's not an enclosing feature, it's like it comes on top in the header. Say adding settings and minimize options in header to the right, right? No start or end. So we are saying that we are adding setting and minimize options in the header on the right, on the right. Yeah, let's use it. So we are saying our widget is tooled as well now, right? Let's say new tooled. See how simple is that, and we are done. We are done, guys. That's how decorator works. But while I am fan of like design patterns, I would definitely warn you that you use it on the basis of requirement. I mean, think of this. I would have like added all this in one place, right? But I have to create these many classes to use decorator. So understand this, guys. Understand the trade-off, right? Right? Settings is added here. So again back to this point. I mean, I'm sorry, I want to repeat this. Please do understand what do these mean. When should you apply the decorator pattern? You do not necessarily need to, or you may need to, but you have to decide based on the trade-off. the variation of inheritance based decorator or composition based decorator, or a kind of a hybrid of those. You can create any type of those. The base idea is to understand how it works, right? It works on a contract, right? You created the contract, you started with the base implementation, right? And then you gave other implementations. Now you may say